Hi, and welcome to Hamster Bites, the bite-sized podcast all about hamsters. Hopefully this episode will be coming out at the beginning of the new year, so Happy New Year to all of you. Let's hope 2026 is a good one for us all and our hamsters. Anyway, I'm so sorry it's taken so long to get this episode recorded and out, but my health always comes first, and I've been working on a massive project, hamster related, and I really hoped that it would have been finished around in maybe September, October time, and no, it's not, but it's nearly finished. So coming to you in 2026, something Cosmic Hamsters related, and I hope that you will all find it useful and helpful. Anyway, moving on to today. When I started this podcast, I wanted to get some episodes out there that covered the basics of hamster care, which is what the last few episodes focused on, and today I will be finishing up this mini-series with the topic of food and water. Hopefully these episodes have been helpful for those of you new to hamsters or thinking of giving a home to a hamster. So, without further ado, let's crack on with today's episode. First off, I want to emphasise food for hamsters is not an easy topic to cover and can be quite complex. This is because depending where you live in the world will not only determine what is available to you, but at what price too. I do think it is important to stress here that sometimes doing your best with what is available where you live is all you can do, and I think this is particularly true when it comes to the main food source. Hamsters are omnivores, which mean they eat both meat and plant-based foods, and when it comes to their main food sources, there are kind of two thoughts to this. Some animal charities and vets might recommend using a pellet food, where it is supposedly a complete balanced diet in every piece. But this can be quite boring for a hamster and actually may not be that great a food source. The other thought is to use a good quality food mix, which is a food that should replicate more like what they would eat in the wild and be a mixture of things such as grains, seeds, vegetables and plants and insects. This is why it is so important to get a species-specific food if you can, as different hamster species come from different terrains in the wild, and that will influence what their natural diet would look like. The main reason why some people recommend the pellet over a food mix is that they worry that a hamster will be picky and only eat their favourite pieces, leaving less desirable pieces behind, and therefore it becomes an unbalanced diet. Personally, I have always used a food mix and would rather use that than just a pellet-based one. If you look at what goes into pellet-based food, it's not normally a huge variety of items and it is a bit bland. Some people choose to do a mix of both, part pellet and part food mix. I have often seen different percentages quoted for the guaranteed analysis. This is the percentage of the different types of nutrients a hamster needs, i.e. protein, fat and fibre. And me being me, wanted to know where these figures actually came from. In all honesty, I did go a bit nuts trying to get to the bottom of this, and I might do a full podcast episode on this in the future, as it turns out that over the years there has been various research carried out, but with varying results, which is why I, and maybe you, have seen so many different percentage ranges recommended. Some of the research dates back many decades, and a lot seems to be done on baby or pregnant hamsters to see what their growth and mortality rates end up being like. One reason why protein recommended percentages may differ could be because when a hamster is younger, it needs more protein, especially in its younger mums when growing compared to a more elderly hamster. If you need to give your hamsters an extra source of protein, this could be done by adding such things as eggs, chicken, turkey or tofu. You can give fresh or dried, just make sure it's bland and has no added seasoning. It's also important that hamsters have fat, as research by Christensen and Dam 1952 showed without fat, weanling hamsters lost their fur, got scaly skin and earwax, and Napker and Judge in 1974 stated hamsters seem to thrive on diets containing 4 to 20% fat. Fibre is also important, as hamsters need this to help with their gut and digestive tract, which helps with absorbing nutrients and preventing constipation. So like I said, I might come back to this in the future and discuss in more depth. I definitely think guaranteed analysis percentages could be a whole podcast episode in itself. Let me know in the comments if this is something you would be interested in or not. Some people do make up their own hamster food mix, especially if they live in a country where it is hard to get a good quality ready-made food mix. If this is something you are interested in doing, then I highly recommend doing more research, and a good place to start is the Hemingway website, which is a website where they have a food calculator to help you make your own mix. You can also use this website to look up a lot of the different foods available around the world and see if they are of a good quality or not. I also highly recommend the website 5 Little Hams, who thoroughly discusses this topic, and also Sweet Hammy Home Rescue's website, where she discusses how she makes her own food for her rescue hamsters. I will leave links to all of these in the description below. Personally, I'm not comfortable with making my own mix, and I'm also not comfortable recommending the independent sellers on places like Etsy, partly because not all of them will be of the same quality and they don't all have a nutrient analysis. I think it boils down to what you are personally comfortable in buying and using for your own hamster. If you are going to go this route, I definitely recommend making sure you do your own further research, starting with the websites I have already mentioned, and for these reasons I will only be recommending food mixes which are well established and are species specific, such as Bunny Dreams Expert, Getsu and Mixorama. How often and how much is normally suggested on the food packet? Some people like to give food to the hamster every other night or so, but I like to give my hamsters a little bit every night, so they always have something to forage for. My reasoning for this is that I figured in the wild they would pretty much be foraging for food every night, and I kind of imagine my hamsters getting stressed looking for food if it wasn't there to be found every night, even if they had their little pile stored up as well as all the other items I had in their enclosures for them to forage. I also recommend avoiding a main food mix that is advertised for lots of small animals and not just for hamsters. For example, it may say suitable for mice, gerbils and hamsters. This will not be species specific at all and will highly likely have some food items in it that are not suitable for a hamster. Moving on, how to give the food to your hamster. Scatter feeding versus bowl. A lot of people recommend scatter feeding. This is basically where you just scatter the food around your hamster's enclosure, and it's meant to replicate how they would have to scavenge for food in the wild, and so the thought behind this is that it gives them something to do and keeps their little brain stimulated. However, in some circumstances, I wouldn't always recommend doing this. For example, when you have a poorly or elderly hamster, or you think your hamster is losing weight, or when you have a new hamster, you may need to keep an eye on if they are eating and how much they are eating. So a bowl can be handy in situations like this. I tended to do a mixture of both, a bit in a bowl and scatter some. Also, for old or poorly hamsters, I highly recommend mushing up some science selective pellets with a bit of water, and at some point in the future I will probably do a more in-depth podcast episode about elderly / poorly hamster care. So, what else can hamsters eat? Well, vegetables and fruit. You can give fresh or dried vegetables and fruits. I tended to avoid giving fruit and stick more to veggies, especially the green veggies. I would tend to give my hamsters a portion every couple of days. I tended to rotate a few different items like broccoli, cauliflower, peas, tiniest bit of kale, otherwise I found it might upset their stomach a bit, spinach or chard leaves. And then, of course, we have forage and sprays. So what are sprays, if you don't know? Hamster sprays are dried grains and grasses with seeds or blossoms still attached. Some examples are flax, millet, oat and sorghum. Believe it or not, but up until a few years ago, it was quite hard to get sprays. You could basically get millet in the bird section and pick and fly by rosewoods, which had about 3 different types, normally flax and 2 other things. So, if you live in a country where sprays are still quite hard to get, I always suggest the bird section in your pet stores, because they should have millet if nothing else. If you are really struggling to get some, you could grow your own. I have videos of this on our YouTube channel, and I will leave links in the description. When growing your own, for example, you can get a packet of flax, also known as linseed, for about £1 from the supermarket, and you can grow them into microgreens, which all my hammies have loved, or let them flower and then dry them out into the seed heads. If you live in the UK and want to have a go at growing your own, I also highly recommend Shelled Warriors shop. Again, I'll leave a link in the description. I have been using their special hamster seeds for years and all my hammies have loved them. It has about 15 different safe edible wildflowers and plants in the seed mix, and they are really quick to grow. In a couple of weeks you have something ready to eat. I recommend growing them in organic soil or coir with no fertilisers added. Other forage can include safe leaves, flowers and herbs such as apple, birch, chamomile, cornflowers, dandelion, marigolds, nettle, raspberry and rose petals. Moonypaw has a blog post all about safe flowers with a much more comprehensive list which you may want to check out. And yes, of course, I'll put a link in the description. Other treats like seeds, nuts, dandelion root, whimsies, anything on the more harder side will also help keep your hamster's teeth trim. In the UK, Europe and USA, we have places like Bunny Bistro, Getsu, Hamsters We Love, Hope's Healthy Treats and Night Angel, where you can get sprays, forage and treats from. But if you are struggling to find items like these that I have mentioned, you could try checking out your local health food shops or anywhere that sells loose leaves for herbal teas and nuts and seeds. You should even be able to find some items in your local supermarket. Right, on to water. You need to make sure your hamster always has access to fresh water, of course, and I always recommend 2 sources of water in case one fails. I tend to use either 2 bottles per hamster or a bottle and a water bowl. So if a bottle leaks or a bowl gets knocked over, your hamster hopefully has a backup. This is why it's important to check on your hamster's water every day to make sure the bottles haven't malfunctioned or some of the bedding hasn't got in the water bowl and soaked up all the water. Also, especially in the summer, if you live in a warmer climate and you are using bowls, make sure the water isn't evaporating too quickly and leaving your hamster with none. Also, don't think you can just fill up a bigger water bottle and it will last for days or weeks, as this would still need to be changed frequently so it's fresh. You don't want stuff like algae growing in it, you know, when the bottles start to go green. But that should not happen if you are changing it frequently and keeping it out of direct bright sunlight. Now, onto what is rapidly becoming my favourite part of each podcast. Over on Cosmic Hamsters community posts, I asked everyone which main hamster food they use. Hamster 100 and Victoria I Am, 7506, both use Bunny Nature Hamster Food. EB Courtney X uses Getsu and Sign Selective. Motionless Aimless uses Mixorama. God is a Hamster. Great username, by the way. Yes, God is a hamster. We worship the hamsters. God is a Hamster uses Sunseed Valley, and Why I Have to Do This uses one from Walmart with Missouri Rat and Mouse Blocks. Now, I have to admit, I don't know how good the last 2 foods, the Sunseed and Walmart ones are, as they are new to me, but I definitely know the others are good quality, and I have used most of them with my hamsters at some point or other. I also asked everyone where they get their forage and sprays from, and Small Sprouts seemed popular with Hamsters 100, Joanna Shaw Crafty and Ali's Animals using them. By the way, Ali's Animals has an awesome YouTube channel and she has a cute little robo named Peggy that she adopted, so if you want to check her channel out, do that. Very cute little robo. Hamsters 100 and Joanna Shaw Crafty also use Hamsters We Love, who I can personally recommend too, as she was my little dwarf hamster Orion's foster before I adopted him, and she always supplied us with some lovely healthy treats. Pet Room Shorts uses Boggle Buddies and Night Angel. Motionless Aimless uses Bunny Bistro, Mixorama and Burgess, and Joanna also mentions the Pick and Fly from Rosewood. That's another good one that I always recommend, especially if on a budget. You can normally get them for between £3 and £5, and it's a pretty decent sized bag off Amazon, and sometimes you can find it in pet stores. And with that, it brings this episode and this beginner's guide mini-series to basic hamster care to an end. Woohoo! I hope you've enjoyed it and found it informative and helpful. Going forward, I have a long list of other topics I want to cover, so stay tuned for them, and if anyone wants me to cover something specific, do let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for listening. Until next time, hope it's not as long a break as this last one was. Stay cosmic.